The afternoon sun slants through the high, clear-story windows of the caldarium, creating shafts of golden light that penetrate the thick steam rising from the hot water pools below. Marcus Aurelius Severus, a merchant of moderate wealth and respectable standing, descends the marble steps into the main bathing chamber of the Baths of Caracalla, one of the largest and most magnificent public bath complexes in all of Rome. The year is 216 AD, and these baths, newly opened by the emperor whose name they bear, represent the pinnacle of Roman engineering and luxury, a place where citizens of all classes can come to cleanse their bodies, conduct business, socialize, and experience a few hours of comfort and relaxation regardless of their station in life. Marcus has paid his quadrans, a small copper coin that represents the entrance fee, barely enough to buy a loaf of bread, but sufficient to grant access to this temple of water and steam. He passes through the apoditerium, the changing room, where he removes his toga and tunic, folding them carefully and placing them in one of the niches that line the walls. A young slave boy, one of the many employed by the bath complex, stands nearby watching the clothes, for theft is a constant problem in such public places where hundreds of people come and go throughout the day. Marcus hands the boy a small tip, ensuring that his garments will receive particular attention, and the boy nods his understanding, his eyes brightening at the generosity. Now naked as is customary in the baths, Marcus proceeds into the frigidarium, the cold room, though he does not intend to use it yet. The Roman bathing routine follows a specific pattern, developed over centuries and believed to be most beneficial for health and vigor. One begins with exercise in palestra, the attached gymnasium, then moves to the tepidarium, the warm room, to begin the sweating process. From there, one advances to the caldarium, the hot room with its pools of heated water, where the real cleansing occurs. Finally, one plunges into the cold pools of the frigidarium, which is believed to close the pores, invigorate the blood, and complete the therapeutic process. But Marcus has already completed his exercises earlier in the day, and at his age, 43 years with the aches and pains that come with middle life, he prefers to skip the coldest pools and focus on the warmth that soothes his joints and muscles. The tepidarium is his destination first, a large vaulted chamber maintained at a comfortable warmth by the hypocaust system beneath the floor. This ingenious heating system, one of Rome's great engineering achievements, consists of a space beneath the floor where hot air from furnaces circulates, warming the tiles above and radiating heat upward. The walls, too, are hollow, with hot air rising through them, creating an even distribution of warmth throughout the chamber. The temperature is perfect, warm enough to induce sweating, but not so hot as to be uncomfortable. Marcus finds a spot on one of the marble benches that line the walls and sits, feeling the warmth seep into his body. Around him, other bathers lounge in various states of relaxation, some sitting quietly, some conversing in low tones, some being attended by slaves who scrape their skin with strigils, curved metal instruments that remove the oil, sweat, and dirt that accumulate during the bathing process. For Romans do not use soap as we understand it. Instead, they coat their skin with olive oil, allow it to mix with sweat and loosen the dirt, and then scrape it all away, a process that is both cleansing and therapeutic, removing dead skin and leaving the body smooth and refreshed. Marcus has brought his own slave, a Greek named Diodorus, who now approaches with flasks of scented oil and a strigil. Diodorus is in his 30s, educated and intelligent, captured during one of Rome's many wars in the East and sold into slavery, eventually purchased by Marcus because of his literacy and his knowledge of Greek literature and philosophy. Over the years, a relationship has developed between them that, while still clearly defined by the master-slave dynamic, contains elements of respect and even something approaching friendship, though neither would use such a term openly. Diodorus begins to apply the oil, his hands working it into Marcus's shoulders and back with practiced efficiency. The oil is scented with lavender and rosemary, expensive additions that Marcus considers worth the cost, for the fragrance is pleasant and believed to have therapeutic properties. As Diodorus works, Marcus closes his eyes and allows his mind to wander, reviewing the events of the day. His business, the import and sale of grain from Egypt, has been going well. A shipment arrived this morning, and he spent several hours at the docks overseeing its unloading and inspection, ensuring that the grain was dry and free from weevils, that the quantity matched what was specified in the contract, that proper payment was rendered to the ship's captain. It was tedious work, requiring attention to detail and constant vigilance against the attempts of various parties to cheat or steal. But it was profitable work, and profit is what allows Marcus to maintain his household, to provide for his wife and 3 children, to employ slaves like Diodorus, and to enjoy luxuries like these afternoon visits to the baths. His contemplation is interrupted by a voice calling his name. Marcus opens his eyes to see Gaius Flavius Rufus, a fellow merchant and occasional business partner, approaching with a broad smile on his fleshy face. Gaius is a larger man than Marcus, both in height and in girth, his prosperity evident in the extra weight he carries. He is attended by 2 slaves, one carrying his oil flask and strigil, the other bearing a tray with wine cups and a jug. For Gaius believes that the baths are not complete without the pleasure of good wine shared with friends. The 2 men greet each other warmly, clasping forearms in the Roman manner, and Gaius settles himself on the bench beside Marcus. His slaves immediately begin their work, oiling him down while pouring wine for both masters. The wine is watered, as is proper, for drinking undiluted wine is considered barbaric, a practice of uncivilized peoples. The vintage is good, not the best but certainly respectable, and Marcus accepts the cup gratefully, for the warm room has made him thirsty. They speak of business first, as Roman men always do, for business is a foundation of status and respect in this commercial empire. Gaius mentions a ship due to arrive next week carrying garum, the fermented fish sauce that is a staple of Roman cuisine, and suggests that Marcus might want to invest in a portion of the cargo. The price is reasonable. The quality is supposedly excellent, coming from the renowned factories of Hispania, and the potential profit is substantial. Marcus listens carefully, asking questions about the reliability of the shipper, the terms of payment, the arrangement for storage and distribution. This is how much business is conducted in Rome, not in offices or formal meetings, but in casual settings like the baths where men can speak freely and assess each other's character and intentions. After discussing the garum deal thoroughly and reaching a tentative agreement to be formalized later with proper contracts and witnesses, their conversation turns to politics. This is always a dangerous topic in Rome, where the wrong word spoken to the wrong person can result in denunciation, exile, or worse. But here in the baths, surrounded by steam and the noise of splashing water and dozens of conversations, there's a certain privacy, and both men feel comfortable speaking more openly than they might elsewhere. They discuss the current emperor, Caracalla, whose official name is Marcus Aurelius Antoninus, but who is known by his nickname, derived from the Gallic hooded cloak he favors. The emperor is young, strong, and militarily ambitious, having recently campaigned in Germania and now preparing for war in the east against Parthia. Opinion on him is divided. Some admire his martial prowess and his generosity to the soldiers, who adore him because he has increased their pay and shares their hardships on campaign. Others deplore his cruelty. His murder of his brother Gitta just a year ago, his paranoid purges of anyone suspected of having supported his brother, his reckless spending on military adventures, and massive building projects like these very baths. Marcus and Gaius are careful in their words, praising the emperor's strength while expressing mild concern about the cost of his ambitions, a position that is safe enough while still acknowledging reality. The conversation shifts again, moving to more pleasant topics. Gossip about mutual acquaintances, news from the provinces, the latest chariot race results, for both men are passionate supporters of the Blue faction, and have won and lost considerable sums betting on the races. They discuss their families. Gaius' eldest son is preparing for his military service, a rite of passage for young men of the equestrian class, while Marcus' daughter is of marriageable age, and he is considering various proposals from families seeking alliance through matrimony. An hour passes pleasantly in this manner, the wine flowing freely, the warmth and companionship creating a sense of well-being and contentment. Eventually, both men decide they are ready to move to the caldarium, the hot room where the real bathing occurs. They rise, somewhat unsteadily due to the wine and the warmth, and make their way to the next chamber, their slaves following with the necessary equipment. The caldarium is even hotter than the tepidarium, the temperature maintained at a level that causes immediate and profuse sweating. The room is enormous, with vaulted ceilings rising to a height of perhaps 40 feet, supported by massive columns of marble. The walls are covered with elaborate mosaics depicting scenes from mythology, gods and heroes, nymphs and satyrs, all rendered in tiny colored tiles with astonishing skill and artistry. The floor is too hot to walk on barefoot, and wooden sandals are provided for those who need them, though most bathers stay on the cooler marble edges or descend directly into the pools. 3 pools dominate the space, large rectangular basins of different temperatures. The first is merely warm, a transitional pool for those not yet ready for greater heat. The second is hot, heated by pipes that carry water directly from the furnaces below. The third is very hot, almost scalding, tolerable only for brief periods, but believed to be especially beneficial for purging impurities from a body. Marcus and Gaius make their way to the second pool and descend the steps into the water. The sensation is glorious, the hot water enveloping them, penetrating deep into muscles, easing tensions and pains. Marcus feels his back, which has been troubling him for weeks due to a fall from his horse, begin to relax. He submerges himself completely, holding his breath and letting the heat work on his entire body, then surfaces with a gasp, water streaming from his hair and beard. Around them, the caldarium is crowded with bathers of all social classes. This is one of the remarkable aspects of Roman baths. They are genuinely public spaces where senator and shopkeeper, wealthy landowner and poor laborer can mingle in relative equality. Everyone is naked, everyone is clean, and while social distinctions certainly persist and people naturally gravitate toward their own class, there is still an unusual degree of mixing that occurs nowhere else in Roman society. In the corner of the room, Marcus notices a group of younger men, their bodies athletic and powerful, engaging in loud horseplay, splashing and wrestling in the water. A bath attendant moves to quiet them, for excessive rowdiness is frowned upon and can result in expulsion, but they subside on their own, their energy spent. Near the third and hottest pool, an elderly senator sits with his eyes closed, his wrinkled body pink from the heat, attended by 3 slaves who fan him and pour cool water over his head periodically to prevent overheating. The senator is a figure of some importance. Marcus recognizes him, though they have never been formally introduced, and several men wait nearby, hoping for a chance to approach him, to pay respects, perhaps to seek favor or present a petition. This, too, is a function of the baths. They serve as informal centers of patronage and politics, places where the powerful can be approached by those seeking their influence. Marcus and Gaius remain in the hot pool for perhaps 20 minutes, alternating between sitting on the submerged benches and standing in the deeper center. They speak little now, content to simply enjoy the physical sensations, the heat driving all thoughts in their minds, reducing existence to pure bodily experience. Other bathers come and go, some staying only briefly, others settling in for longer soaks. The sound of the caldarium create a constant background music, the splashing of water, the murmur of conversations, the echoing acoustics of the vaulted space amplifying every sound. Eventually, the heat becomes too intense, and Marcus signals to Diodorus that he is ready for the next phase. He climbs from the pool, water streaming from his body, and stands while his slave begins the scraping process. Diodorus works systematically, starting with Marcus's back, using the curved strigil to scrape away the mixture of oil, sweat, and dissolved dirt. The motion is firm but not painful, a practice technique that removes impurities without damaging the skin. He works down the back, across the buttocks and legs, then has Marcus turn so he can attend to the front, the chest, the arms, the stomach, the legs again. Every surface is scraped clean. The accumulated residue is dark and somewhat disgusting, collected on the edge of the strigil and periodically wiped away onto a cloth. When the scraping is complete, Diodorus pours clean water over Marcus's body, rinsing away any remaining oil and loosened skin. The result is a feeling of extraordinary cleanliness, the skin smooth and refreshed, almost tingling with sensitivity. Marcus feels renewed, the aches and tensions of the day wash away along with the literal dirt. Gaius undergoes the same process with his own slaves, and when both men are clean, they face a decision. The traditional next step would be to proceed to the frigidarium and plunge into the cold pools, shocking the body with the extreme temperature change. But both men are of an age where such shocks are less appealing, and both have learned that skipping this step results in no apparent harm to their health despite what the doctors claim. Instead, they decide to visit the massage rooms, private chambers where professional masseurs will work their muscles with scented oils, providing the perfect conclusion to the bathing ritual. They make their way through the complex, passing through corridors decorated with statuary and paintings, past libraries where scholars read and discuss philosophy, past exercise rooms where men box and wrestle and lift weights. The baths are truly a microcosm of Roman civilization, offering not just cleansing but entertainment, education, social interaction, and physical culture all in one magnificent complex. The massage rooms are smaller, more intimate spaces, each containing a padded table and equipped with various oils and unguents. Marcus and Gaius each claim a room, tipping the attendants generously to ensure good service. Marcus lies face down on the table, and a masseur, a hulking Thracian with hands like mallets, begins to work on his back and shoulders. The pressure is intense, almost painful at first, but as the masseur's strong fingers find and release the knots of tension in Marcus's muscles, the pain gives way to profound relief. The oil being used is scented with cinnamon and myrrh, exotic and expensive, and the fragrance fills the small room with its rich aroma. The masseur works in silence, professional and focused, his hands moving with practiced skill from shoulders to lower back, from back to legs, finding every point of tension and addressing it. Marcus drifts in a state between waking and sleeping, his mind quiet, his body surrendering to the manipulation. Time becomes meaningless, measured only by the rhythm of the massage, the press and release, the kneading and stroking. At some point, the masseur has him turn over, and the treatment continues on his front, chest, and arms, stomach and thighs, until finally every muscle has been attended to and Marcus lies completely relaxed, more at peace than he has felt in months. When the massage concludes, Marcus lies still for a few minutes, reluctant to move and break the spell of deep relaxation. But eventually, he rouses himself, tips the masseur generously, and makes his way back to where Diodorus waits with his clothing. The process of dressing is slow and pleasant. Putting on the clean tunic that Diodorus has carefully guarded, arranging the toga in its complex folds, a task that requires assistance and practice. For a properly draped toga is both a challenge and a status symbol, distinguishing Roman citizens from foreigners and slaves who are forbidden from wearing this garment. Fully dressed and feeling renewed, Marcus meets Gaius in the main hall of the baths. Both men are glowing with health and cleanliness, their skin pink and smooth, their bodies relaxed. They have spent nearly 3 hours in the baths, a not unusual amount of time, for Romans often spend their entire afternoon here, from the end of the business day until dinner time. They exit together, emerging from the magnificent building into the late afternoon sun. The streets of Rome are crowded, as always, a chaos of people and animals and vehicles. The noise and smell a sharp contrast to the relative serenity of the baths. But Marcus hardly notices, still wrapped in his sense of well-being. He and Gaius part ways with promises to meet again soon to finalize their business arrangement, and Marcus begins to walk home with Diodorus, following a respectful 2 paces behind. As he walks, Marcus reflects on the role the baths play in Roman life. They are more than just places to get clean, more even than social centers or business venues. They represent something essential about Roman civilization, about the belief that physical health and cleanliness are foundations of virtue and civic life. The baths embody Roman engineering genius, Roman wealth and power, Roman democratic ideals that all citizens regardless of wealth should have access to such facilities, and Roman understanding that community and civilization are built through shared spaces and shared experiences. The emperors understand this, which is why they invest enormous resources in building and maintaining bath complexes throughout the empire, earning the gratitude and loyalty of the populace who use them daily. Marcus arrives at his house, a modest but comfortable dwelling in a respectable neighborhood, and is greeted by his wife Livia, who immediately notices his improved mood and refreshed appearance. She knows where he has been, for he goes to the baths several times each week, and she approves, for she has seen how the visits improve his health and his temperament. Dinner will be ready soon, and the family will gather. But for now, Marcus has a few minutes to himself. He retires to the tablinum, his private study, and sits in his chair, enjoying the last of the day's light filtering through the window. He thinks about mortality, about time, about how these hours of simple pleasure and cleanliness are among the best that life offers. Tomorrow will bring new concerns, new business deals, new problems to solve. But for now, in this moment, he is content. Clean in body and calm in mind, a Roman citizen enjoying the fruits of his empire civilization. As evening falls and the household slaves light the lamps, Marcus rises to join his family for the evening meal. But he carries with him a memory of the baths, the warmth and the steam, the conversations and the massage, the profound satisfaction of being clean and cared for. It is a good life, he reflects, despite its challenges and uncertainties. A life made better by the simple human needs for cleanliness and community. Both fulfilled in those magnificent marble halls where Rome's citizens gather to wash away the dust of daily life and emerge renewed. But the story of the baths extends far beyond the experience of wealthy merchants like Marcus. The complex employs hundreds of people whose livelihoods depend on its daily operation, and their world is very different from that of the bathers they serve. In the furnace rooms beneath the caldarium, stokers work in conditions that can only be described as hellish, feeding the insatiable fires that heat the water and warm the floors above. These men, usually slaves or freemen of the lowest class, labor in darkness and intense heat, their bodies blackened with soot, their lungs damaged by constant exposure to smoke. They work in shifts that run around clock. The fires cannot be allowed to go out, or it would take days to reheat the massive bath complex. The work is brutal and dangerous. Men sometimes collapse from heat exhaustion, or are burned when they stumble too close to the flames. But it is work, and for the free men among them, it provides wages enough to support their families, while for the slaves, it is the duty they must perform or face punishment. The head stoker, a freedman named Lucius who was enslaved as a boy but earned his freedom through years of faithful service, oversees the operation with the skill of an engineer. He knows exactly how much wood or charcoal each furnace requires, how to adjust the flow of air to control the temperature, how to maintain the delicate balance that keeps the baths at the perfect temperature throughout the complex. His knowledge is practical rather than theoretical, learned through years of experience rather than formal education, but it is knowledge nonetheless, and he takes pride in his work even as it slowly kills him. Above ground, but still below the notice of most bathers, the bath attendants perform countless tasks that keep the complex functioning. They collect the entrance fees and manage the flow of visitors, ensuring that the various rooms do not become too crowded. They guard the changing rooms, watching for thieves who would steal clothing and belongings. They maintain the pools, constantly draining and refilling them to keep the water reasonably clean, though by modern standards the water will be considered dangerously unsanitary, for it is not chlorinated or filtered, and many bathers use the pools as latrines despite regulations forbidding this practice. They clean the floors, wiping away the constant accumulation of water and oil, preventing slips and falls. They manage the complicated plumbing system, unclogging drains and repairing leaks, ensuring that fresh water flows in and wastewater flows out. Most of these workers are slaves, owned by the state or by the contractor who has been granted the right to operate the baths, and their lives are hard and unrewarding, filled with menial labor and little hope of improvement. Yet even they benefit from the baths in a small way, for they are allowed to use the facilities during the early morning hours before the paying public arrives, and many take advantage of this privilege, enjoying a brief taste of the luxury they provide for others. The professional staff of the baths represent a slightly higher class. The masseurs, like the Thracian who attended Marcus, are skilled workers who command good wages and enjoy relative respect. Many are former athletes, their bodies still powerful though no longer in competitive condition, who have found a way to continue using their physical prowess for profit. The barbers who maintain shops within the bath complex are independent businessmen, paying rent for their space but keeping their profits, and a skilled barber can earn a comfortable living, for every Roman man of standing maintains his hair and beard carefully, and a trip to the baths often includes a trim and a shave. The merchants who sell food and drink, the trainers who teach wrestling and boxing, the doctors who offer medical advice and treat minor ailments, all of these contribute to the economic ecosystem that surrounds the baths, creating employment and opportunity for hundreds of people. There are also the less respectable professions that thrive in and around the baths. Prostitutes, both male and female, work the crowds, offering their services to bathers looking for pleasures beyond the merely hygienic. This is technically illegal, and the bath managers periodically crack down on such activity, but it is never completely eliminated. For where there are crowds of people with time and money, there will always be those offering sexual services. Pickpockets and con artists also work the baths, taking advantage of the crowded conditions and the fact that people are distracted and often impaired by wine and heat. The management employs security staff to deal with such criminals, and those caught face severe punishment, but the potential rewards are great enough that there is never a shortage of people willing to take the risk. The social dynamics within the baths are complex and fascinating, a reflection of Roman society as a whole with all its hierarchies and tensions. While the baths are technically open to all free men, and even some slaves when accompanied by their masters, there are informal codes and expectations that govern behavior. Wealthy patrons like Marcus expect and receive deference from poorer bathers, who might vacate a particularly desirable spot in a pool when a social superior approaches. Senators and equestrians, the highest classes, often have private chambers or reserved areas where they can bathe without mixing with the common crowd. Though many choose to use the public areas as a way of demonstrating their connection to the people, a politically valuable display of accessibility. Women have their own separate bathing hours and facilities. For mixed bathing, though it occurs in some less reputable establishments, it is considered scandalous and is periodically banned by morally concerned emperors, though such bans are rarely enforced consistently. The women's hours are usually in the morning, before the men arrive, and the women's experience of the baths is both similar to and different from the men's. They too cleanse and socialize. They too conduct business and maintain social networks. But their conversations revolve around different concerns: marriages and children, household management and family politics, rather than commercial transactions and political machinations. For many Roman women, especially those of the upper classes who spend most of their time confined to their homes under the watchful eyes of husbands and fathers, the baths represent a rare opportunity for relative freedom and autonomous social interaction. The baths also serve as venues for intellectual and cultural activity. Many bath complexes include libraries where scholars can read and discuss philosophy, history, and literature. Marcus has occasionally availed himself of these facilities, not because he is particularly scholarly, but because it is expected of a man of his class to show some interest in learning and culture. The libraries are quiet spaces, a contrast to the noise and activity of the bathing rooms, and they are frequented by serious students, by teachers preparing lessons, and by gentlemen of leisure who wish to appear cultured. Public readings and lectures are sometimes held in the larger rooms. Famous authors and philosophers presenting their work to audiences who may be genuinely interested or may simply be there, because attending such events is fashionable. The exercise facilities attached to the baths are central to Roman ideals of physical culture and masculinity. Young men in particular spend hours in palestra, the outdoor exercise ground, and in the indoor gymnasium, wrestling, boxing, throwing the discus and javelin, lifting weights, all in pursuit of the strong athletic body that is considered essential to virtue and citizenship. Trainers supervise the activities, teaching proper technique, and pushing their students to greater achievements. These trainers are often former gladiators or soldiers, men with practical knowledge of combat and physical conditioning, and they command respect and obedience from their pupils. The pursuit of physical excellence is not mere vanity, but is intimately connected to Roman military culture, for every citizen must be prepared to serve in the legions, and a strong body is essential for survival in warfare. As evening approaches and the working day comes to an end for most Romans, the baths reach their peak of activity. The pools become crowded, the noise level rises, the attendants work frantically to keep up with demand. This is when the baths truly become a cross-section of Roman society, with men of all ages and classes packed together in the steamy chambers. Arguments break out occasionally, over a perceived slight or an accidentally spilled cup of wine, or simply because people are hot and crowded and tempers run short. The bath security staff intervene quickly to prevent fights, for violence in the baths is not tolerated and can result in permanent banishment, a serious penalty given how central the baths are to Roman social life. During these crowded hours, one can observe the full diversity of Rome's population. Veterans of the legions, their bodies scarred from decades of campaigns, sit alongside fresh-faced young men preparing for their first military service. Successful businessmen, like Marcus, mingle with struggling shopkeepers barely scraping by. Freedmen who have worked their way up from slavery and now enjoy modest prosperity share the pools with slaves attending their masters, creating complex dynamics where a freed slave might outrank in legal status a slave who serves a powerful senator. Foreign merchants from Egypt, Greece, Syria, Africa, all corners of the empire, bring their own languages and customs, adding to the cosmopolitan character of the space. Artists and actors, Occupations that carry low social status despite their cultural importance come to the baths seeking patrons and commissions, using the social opportunities to network and promote their work. Teachers and philosophers, doctors and lawyers, all the professional classes that keep Roman civilization functioning, use the baths as meeting places and as sites for informal business dealings. The sensory experience of the baths at their busiest is overwhelming. The sound is a cacophony of splashing water, echoing voices, the scrape of strigils, the slap of masseurs' hands on oiled skin, occasional laughter or shouts. The smell is a mixture of perfumed oils, sweat, steam, the faint odor of the sewers that carry away the wastewater, and the food being sold by vendors who set up near the entrances. The visual scene is a chaos of moving bodies, steam obscuring and revealing, light filtering through high windows or from the hundreds of oil lamps that line the walls and float in waterproof holders in the pools themselves. The sensation of the water against the skin, the smooth marble beneath the feet, the heat pressing on the body from all sides, all combine to create an experience that is at once relaxing and stimulating, private yet communal, mundane yet somehow special. As darkness falls completely outside, the character of the baths changes once more. The afternoon crowds begin to thin as men head home for their evening meals. The lamps become more important as natural light fades entirely. The atmosphere becomes somewhat more intimate, quieter. The remaining bathers often the most dedicated habitués, men who treat the baths as their second home and are in no hurry to leave. Some of these are elderly men with nowhere better to be, their families dead or scattered, finding companionship and warmth in the baths that they lack elsewhere. Others are men conducting business that requires privacy, meeting in corners to discuss deals that might not withstand public scrutiny. Some are simply lovers of the bathing culture, purists who appreciate the facilities most when they are less crowded and can use them properly without rushing. The staff begin their evening routines, preparing to close down some facilities while keeping others open, for the baths operate on an extended schedule, with some sections remaining accessible until late into the night. The furnaces must be tended continuously, the water flow maintained. Security patrols increase the guard against vandalism and theft in the emptier spaces. It is during these quiet evening hours that the true regulars of the baths reveal themselves, the men for whom this place is more than a weekly or daily visit, but rather the center of their social existence. There's Quintus, an aging former soldier who lost a leg in the Dacian Wars and now survives on a modest pension, spending his days at the baths where he is treated with respect for his service and can find companionship with other veterans who share his experiences. There's Apollodorus, a Greek physician who offers medical advice to bathers who seek him out, earning tips and fees that supplement his formal practice. There's Titus, a young poet of modest talent and no prospects, who hopes to find a wealthy patron by making himself available in the baths, ready to compose verses praising anyone who might support him. These men and dozens like them have made the baths their territory, their domain, and they know every corner, every attendant, every pattern of the daily and seasonal cycles. The bath complex at night takes on a different character, almost mystical in the lamplight, the steam rising like spirits, the shadows deeper and more mysterious. The sounds are different too, echoing more in the emptier spaces. Every splash and voice amplified and distorted. This is when the baths feel most ancient, most connected to the primitive human need for water and warmth, most like temples to some unnamed deity of cleanliness and community. This is when one can imagine the baths continuing forever, long after the empire has fallen, long after the language and the laws have been forgotten, some essential human ritual that will persist as long as people need to be clean and warm and connected to one another. Of course, this vision is an illusion, though those standing in the lamplight steam do not know it. In less than 2 centuries, Rome will be sacked. The aqueducts that supply water to the baths will be cut by invading barbarians, and these magnificent structures will fall into ruin, their engineering forgotten, their purpose lost. Medieval Christians will see them as monuments to pagan decadence, and will deliberately destroy what time and neglect have not already claimed. The marble will be stripped away to build churches, the statues smashed as idols, the pipes melted down for metal. By the Dark Ages, the very concept of public bathing will be lost in Europe, and people will live in filth that would horrify any Roman. It will take more than 1,000 years for European civilization to rediscover the benefits of regular bathing and to build facilities that approach, though never quite match, the sophistication of these Roman thermae. But in this moment, in this year of 216 AD, the baths stand at the apex of their development, the culmination of centuries of Roman engineering and cultural evolution. The men who use them daily have no sense of impending doom, no premonition that their civilization is approaching its peak and will soon begin its long decline. They are concerned with immediate things, with business and politics, with their health and their pleasure, with the small dramas of daily life that seem so important and that time will prove so ephemeral. Around the 9th hour of the night, which will be around 3 in the morning by our reckoning, the last public sections of the baths close. The final bathers are ushered out by attendants, some protesting, but most complying peacefully, too relaxed and clean to put up much resistance. The doors are locked, the remaining lamps extinguished except for those needed by the night staff. The stokers continue their work in the furnace rooms, maintaining the fires at a lower level, keeping the system warm enough that it can be brought back to full heat quickly in the morning, but conserving fuel during the hours of lowest demand. A skeleton crew of guards patrols the empty halls, their footsteps echoing in the vast spaces, their torches casting moving shadows on the walls. The silence of the closed baths is profound, broken only by the constant sound of running water, for the fountains and the water supply never stop, the aqueducts bringing millions of gallons into the city every day, so much water that even these massive bath complexes represent only a fraction of the total consumption. In the empty caldarium, steam still rises from the pools, though no one is there to see it. The elaborate mosaics on the floors and walls, created by master craftsmen over years of painstaking labor, depict their mythological scenes to an audience of shadows. The statues of gods and emperors stand in silent rows, their marble eyes blank and unseeing. The building itself seems to rest, to gather its strength for another day of service to thousands of visitors who will come seeking cleanliness and community. In his modest house across the city, Marcus Aurelius Severus sleeps soundly, his body relaxed from the afternoon at the baths, his mind at peace. Beside him, his wife Livia sleeps as well, and in the adjoining rooms, their children dream of their own futures, unaware of the historical forces that will shape their lives in ways their parents cannot anticipate. In the slave quarters, Diodorus lies awake, as he often does, thinking of his homeland and his life before slavery, wondering if he will ever see freedom again, hoping that his master might someday grant a manumission as a reward for faithful service. In the Suburra, Rome's poorest district, families crowd together in insulated apartment buildings, living in squalor that contrasts sharply with the luxury of the baths. But even they will visit the baths tomorrow, for the entrance fee is affordable even to the poor, a deliberate policy of the government to ensure that all Romans, regardless of class, have access to clean water and the basic dignity of cleanliness. In the imperial palace on the Palatine Hill, the Emperor Caracalla sleeps, surrounded by guards, his dreams troubled by paranoia and ambition, by the ghost of the brother he murdered, and the enemies he imagines lurk behind every column and curtain. He is proud of the baths that bear his name, sees them as his legacy, as proof of his generosity and his connection to the Roman people. He does not know that he has less than a year to live, that he will be murdered by his own soldiers during the Parthian campaign, betrayed by men he trusted. He does not know that his name will be remembered more for his cruelty than for his building projects, that history will judge him harshly despite his military successes and his grand architectural achievements. The night passes slowly, stars wheeling overhead in their eternal patterns, the city sleeping fitfully, always some activity somewhere, for Rome never truly stops, never truly rests. Fires burn in temples where priests maintain the eternal flames. Guards pace the walls and watch the gates. Ships arrive at Ostia, Rome's port, their cargoes waiting to be unloaded at dawn. In hospitals, the sick suffer through the long hours of darkness, attended by doctors whose knowledge is limited but whose dedication is real. In taverns near the docks and in the rougher districts, men drink and gamble and fight, heedless of the hour. In villas on the hills above the city, wealthy senators plot and scheme, forming alliances and planning betrayals. The endless game of Roman politics that never pauses. And throughout it all, the aqueducts continue their work, bringing water from distant mountains, gravity fed through channels and pipes, an engineering marvel that makes the city's existence possible, that allows 1 million people to live in concentration that would otherwise be impossible. As dawn approaches, the city begins to stir once more. Bakers light their ovens, beginning the day's bread production. Farmers from the surrounding countryside arrive at the gates with their produce, vegetables and fruits, cheese and eggs, to be sold in the markets. Slaves are sent out by their masters on early morning errands, fetching water from public fountains, buying food for the day's meals, carrying messages between households. The streets fill gradually with activity, the Roman day beginning anew. At the Baths of Caracalla, the night staff prepare for the transition to day operations. The furnaces are stoked higher, bringing the water temperature back to optimal levels. The doors are unlocked. The lamps are lit throughout the complex. The changing rooms are swept and cleaned. Fresh towels and linens are brought out. The first attendants arrive for their shifts, greeting each other sleepily, preparing for another day of service to the public. The very first visitors begin to arrive even before the official opening, regulars who like to bathe early before the crowd arrive, and the staff accommodate them, for flexibility in service is part of what makes the baths successful. Among these early arrivals is an elderly woman, stooped with age but still mobile, coming for women's morning hours. She is accompanied by a slave girl who helps her navigate the stairs and the slippery floors. The warm water will ease her arthritis, the only relief she can find from the constant pain that afflicts her joints. Behind her comes a young woman, obviously pregnant, seeking the comfort of the warm pools for her aching back and swollen feet. Then a mother with 2 daughters, coming early to avoid the crowds that might expose her girls to inappropriate sights or conversations. These women and many others will spend the morning in the baths, conducting their own version of the social and cleansing rituals that the men perform in the afternoon, a parallel world that exists in the same physical space, but in different time, maintaining the rigid gender segregation that Roman morality demands. As the sun rises higher and the day fully begins, the city comes alive with all its contradictions and complexities. This is Rome at its height, the greatest city in the world, capital of an empire that stretches from Britain to Mesopotamia, from the Rhine to the Sahara. Its population is diverse beyond anything the world has seen before, including people from every culture and ethnicity, speaking hundreds of languages, worshipping countless gods despite the official state religion. It is a city of extraordinary wealth and grinding poverty, of magnificent public buildings and squalid tenements, of high culture and brutal entertainment, of law and order maintained by military force. And threading through all of this complexity, connecting all these disparate elements, are institutions like the baths, spaces where Romans of all classes and backgrounds come together, if only briefly, in pursuit of the simple human needs for cleanliness and community. By mid-morning, the men's hours are beginning and the first male bathers arrive. They are mostly elderly men who rise early and prefer to complete their bathing before the afternoon crowds arrive. Among them is a philosopher, a follower of the Stoic school, who uses his time in the warm water to practice his meditation, finding in the sensory experience of the bath a way to train his mind to focus on the present moment and to accept with equanimity whatever fortune brings. Beside him soaks a merchant recently arrived from Alexandria, still adjusting to the Roman climate and Roman customs, marveling at the size and sophistication of these baths which exceed anything found in the eastern cities. Near the pool's edge sits a young man who came to Rome from provincial towns seeking his fortune, working as a clerk in a government office, using the baths because it is what Romans do when he wishes to appear properly Roman, to fit in and perhaps rise in status through connections made in these social spaces. The morning hours pass, more men arrive, the pools begin to fill, and the cycle continues as it does every day, as it has done for years, as everyone assumes it will continue to do indefinitely. For that is the nature of civilization. It feels permanent to those living within it. The routines and structures seem eternal. The continuation of the present into the future appears guaranteed. No one sees the cracks, the slow decay, the accumulation of problems that will eventually prove insurmountable. The military threats on the border seem manageable. The economic pressure is temporary. The political instability a normal part of Roman life. No one imagines that within 200 years, the Western Empire will cease to exist, that the city itself will be reduced to a small medieval town surrounded by the ruins of its former greatness, that these magnificent baths will become quarries where later generations mine for building materials, that the knowledge of how to build such structures will be lost for 1,000 years. But on this morning, in this moment, none of that future is visible. The baths stand solid and magnificent. The water flows endlessly from the aqueducts. The fires burn hot in the furnaces below, and Romans come seeking cleanliness and comfort, finding both in abundance. The institution functions smoothly, a testament to Roman organizational ability and engineering skill. The complex web of workers, from the slaves who stoke the furnaces to the freedmen who manage the operations to the contractors who hold the license, all perform their roles with practiced efficiency, creating an experience that appears effortless to the bathers, but that requires constant work and attention behind the scenes. Around midday, the baths reach a moderate level of activity, neither empty nor crowded, a pleasant time to visit for those with flexible schedules. A group of students arrives, young men of good families receiving their education under the guidance of a philosopher-teacher. He has brought them to the baths for a practical lesson about Roman culture and civilization, pointing out the engineering marvels, discussing the social significance of these spaces, using the baths themselves as a text to be read and understood. The students listen with varying degrees of attention, some genuinely interested, others more focused on the prospect of swimming and relaxing in the pools once the lesson concludes. This, too, is part of the bath's function as an educational resource, a place where practical knowledge and cultural values are transmitted from generation to generation. In the library attached to the complex, a different kind of education is taking place. A copyist works diligently, reproducing a manuscript of Virgil's Aeneid, his skilled hand forming letters with practiced precision on expensive parchment. Nearby, two scholars debate a point of rhetoric, their voices rising and falling with the passion of intellectual engagement. A lawyer reviews case documents, preparing for a trial that will take place in a forum this afternoon. These are the quieter, more cerebral pleasures that the baths offer, complementing the physical and social activities of the bathing rooms themselves. As afternoon approaches, the character of the baths shifts once more, preparing for the peak hours when the working day ends and Romans flood the complex, seeking relaxation and rejuvenation. The staff prepare for this rush, ensuring that everything is in perfect order, that the pools are clean, the supplies adequate, the temperatures properly maintained. The afternoon crowd is different from the morning visitors, younger on average, more energetic, more interested in the social aspect of the baths, rather than purely the cleansing function. This is when the baths truly become the heart of Roman public life, when business is conducted, when political alliances are formed, when the gossip of the city is shared and amplified, when the pulse of the empire can be felt in the conversations and interactions that fill the steamy chambers. And so the cycle continues, day after day, year after year, the baths serving their multiple functions, cleaning bodies, facilitating commerce, providing entertainment, connecting people across class boundaries, embodying in physical form the Roman values of public service, civic culture, and collective welfare. They are among the greatest achievements of Roman civilization, expressions in marble and water the belief that society should provide for the basic needs of all its members, that cleanliness and health are public goods worthy of massive investment, that shared spaces and shared experiences are the foundation of community. For a few more decades, these beliefs will hold, the baths will continue to function, and Romans will take for granted their access to clean water and warm pools, assuming that such things are simply the natural order of civilization. But that assumption, like so much else in the Roman world, rests on foundations that are more fragile than they appear, dependent on continued investment in infrastructure, on the maintenance of the aqueducts, on the fuel supply for the furnaces, on the social stability that allows people to gather peacefully in public spaces. When those foundations begin to crumble, as they will, the baths will be among the first casualties, too expensive to maintain, too dependent on complex systems that require centralized organization and resources. But that future, though approaching, remains invisible on this afternoon as the baths fill with Romans seeking their daily cleansing. In this moment, the Baths of Caracalla represent the apex of ancient bathing culture, a monument to human ingenuity and social organization, a space where the mighty and the humble share the same pools, where the body and the soul are both attended to, where civilization reveals itself in the simple act of gathering together to be clean. The sun moves across the sky, light shifts through the high windows, Steam rises eternally from heated pools, and life continues in all its complexity and beauty, unaware that it is writing the final chapters of the story that will end in ruins and memory, in legend and longing for a past that will seem, to later generations, almost impossibly sophisticated and humane. This is a world of the Roman baths, a world we have lost and perhaps will never fully recover, a reminder of what civilization can achieve when it chooses to invest in the common good, in shared spaces, in the belief that everyone deserves access to cleanliness and dignity and community.